Magandang araw, mga kapwa Pilipino. Welcome to episode number 4 for our Proyekto Pilipino. Ngayong araw, pag-uusapan natin ang Kongreso, no? Ang House of Representatives at saka ang Senado. At ito isang napakahalagang masasabi natin, bahagi ng gobyerno. This is the second branch in the government. Siyempre, executive, the legislative, and then the judiciary. Napag-usapan na natin nung nakaraan 2 episode ang Office of the President, Office ng Vice Presidente. Ngayon naman, pag-uusapan natin ang Kongreso, ang House of Representatives at Senado. Siyempre, papaliwanag yan sa atin ngayong araw ng explainer.
Thank you, Father Tito. Bagamat ang karamihan sa atin, natutunan natin ang Kongreso sa kwento ng una nating kapuluan na panggawa ng batas, ang Malolos Congress. Ngunit, sa totoo lamang, ang Kongreso natin ay nagsimula sa 20th century and meron tayong isang specific type of Congress. Ito ang tinatawag na bicameral legislature. Ibig sabihin, isang kapuluan na may dalawang bahagi sa loob, ang Kamara de Representantes or House of Representatives at ang Senado. Ang Kamara, itinatag noong 1907. Ang unang speaker nito, ang pinuno ng Kamara, si Serge Osmeña. Sa kasulukuyan, 304 plus na diputado o representante ang miyembro nito at ang mga miyembro na ito ay hati din. Merong tinatawag na mga representatives from legislative districts at merong mga party list ng mga representante. Pag-usapan natin yung maya-maya. But simple lang ang requirements dito. 25 years old, literate, registered voter at residente ng lugar kung saan sila kandidato ng 1 taon. Ito ang magiging 34th election natin for members of the House of Representatives. Sa Senado naman, ang pinuno nito, Senate President. Manolo Quezon, nung una naging Senate President, 24 ang ating mga senador. Ito ang magiging 29th election for the Senate sa ating kasaysayan. At ang requirements nito, simple din. 35 years old, literate, registered voters at residente ng 2 taon. So, sa akin, kung titingnan natin ang trabaho ng Kongreso, 2 lang naman talaga ito. Ang una at ang pinaka-pamilyar sa ating lahat ay gumawa ng batas or legislation. But katumbas din nito ang trabaho ng tinatawag na oversight sa ibang bansa o sinisigurado ng mga miyembro ng Kongreso na ipinapatupad ang mga batas na pinapasa nito. So, sa ating balita, generally, 2 uri ng paggagalaw na politikal ang napapansin natin. Unang-una, konektado sa tinatawag na Commission on Appointments. Ano ba ito? Ito ay isang commission kung saan ang mga miyembro ay taga-Kamara at taga-Senado at ang trabaho nila ay suriin ang mga ina-appoint ng Pangulo at nasa kanila kung a-approve nila ang mga ito o hindi. Ang pangalawa din ay ang tinatawag nating third chamber. And ito medyo komplikadong proseso, but may pangalan ito. Ito ang Bicameral Conference Committee dahil kung 2 ang bahagi ng Kongreso, kaya lang iisang batas lamang ang magiging produkto ng kanilang mga talakayan, kailangan umupo ang 2 panig upang ikumpara ang pinasa nila at umabot sa isang kasunduan. At kaya dito pumapasok ang sinasabi na basic requirement ng lahat ng politika katulad ng mga gawaing politikal sa Kamara at sa Senado, and this is compromise. Ngayon, pagdating sa Kongreso, kailangan ang basbas ng Kongreso bilang institusyon sa mga ibang gawa or desisyon ng Pangulo. For example, kung magdedeklara ng giyera, ang Pangulo kailangan siya pumunta sa Kongreso para humingi ng kanilang approval. Kung magdedeklara ng martial law, kailangan din ito ng approval mula sa Kongreso. Hindi katulad noon na binaliwala. Kailangan din ng basbas ng Kongreso ang proklamasyon ng amnestiya o pagpapatawad sa mga naging rebelde o lumabag sa mga politikal na gawain ng ating bansa. At pwede rin i-override ang tinatawag na veto ng isang Pangulo, pero hindi pa ito nangyayari since 1935, mula nung nagkaroon tayo ng 1935 Constitution. So, paano natin kukumpara ang Kamara at ang Senado? Ang Kamara, masasabi nating lokal na pananaw ang itinataguyod nito. Kaya hinahalal ang mga miyembro ng Kamara mula sa mga distrito o kaya sa mga sektor na nangangampanya para magkaroon ng representante. So, kaya dito pumapasok ang tinatawag nating party list. Ang mga party list ay ang mga kinatawan ng mga dehadong sektor o mga bahagi ng lipunan na kailangan ng tulong upang hindi sila matabunan ng mga naghaharing uri. Dito rin kailangan magmula ang pagsusuri ng budget, ibig sabihin sa Kamara. Ito na tawag na power of the purse at baka pag-uusapan ito ng ating guest mamaya. Sila din ang piskal o prosecutor sa impeachment. Sila ang nag-approve ng mga paratang kung merong mga miyembro ng ehekutibo o ibang mga bahagi ng pamahalaan na pwedeng i-impeach. At dahil lokal ang kanilang pinoproblema, sila ay palaging kakampi ng sino man ang naging pangulo. Dahil chances are kapartido din sila. Pag-uusapan din natin yan mamaya. So, pagdating naman sa Senado, iba ang karakter nito, pambansang pananaw ang dinadala ng mga senador sa kanilang trabaho. Kaya hinahalal sila ng buong bansa. Iisa ang distrito ng lahat ng mga senador at ito ang buong Pilipinas. Sinadya ito upang maging training ground for future presidents ang Senado. Sila din ang taga-approve ng mga kasunduan ng ating mga pangulo sa ibang bansa o tinatawag na mga treaties. At sila ang nagsisilbing hukuman sa isang impeachment. At dahil buong bansa ang kanilang distrito, iniisip ng karamihan ng mga senador o kaya lahat ng mga senador na katumbas nila ang Pangulo at Vice Presidente pagdating sa mandato. Kaya pwede nilang i-resist o labanan ang ibang mga desisyon ng Presidente kung kinakailangan. Kaya Father Tito, yun ang basic introduction natin sa ating Kongreso at sana sa ating guest, talagang mas malawak ang ating pagkakaintindi dito.
Ako sigurado ko na madadagdagan ng depth yung yung ating kwentuhan na yan. Kaya siguro umpisahan na natin. At syempre, kagaya ng mga nakarang episode, kasama natin si Carlo Santiago sa ating kwentuhan. Ang kagandahan dito sa ating mga kasama, ang kwentuhan na ito, si Carlo, ang unang trabaho niya ay sa Senado, no? Naging staff siya ng mga senador. At syempre, ngayon naman ay isang masasabi natin, isang sa pinakamahusay na senador natin ng Republika, isa sa pinakaginagalang at tinitingala ng Senado. Nagpapasalamat tayo nga na magkukwento sa atin ng buhay sa Senado at ang role ng buong Kongreso natin. Walang iba kundi ang kagalang-galang na si Senator Serge Osmeña.
Senator Serge, good morning ho. Nabanggit ho kanina ni Manolo na ang trabaho sa Senado, sa Kongreso ay magpasa ng batas. Sa tingin niyo ho, Senator, ano ho yung pinaka-importanting batas na pinapasa ng Kongreso kada taon?
Well, of course, the national budget, because that's imperative. We have to pass that every year before the end of the calendar year, so that the next calendar year it will be already in operation. So it's the national budget.
Ano ho yung nangyayari pagka hindi ho tayo nakakapasa ng national budget?
Hindi wala tayong pera.
Okay.
So ang naalala ko ho noon, Senator, pagka budget time, lahat ho ng staff ng mga senators, hanggang gabi ho kami na minsan yung iba doon na natutulog sa opisina. Ano ho ba yung mga tinatalakay noon? Saka, ito ho napansin ko nung bagito ho ako rin. Bakit ho nagsisimula sa Kongreso yung proseso ng pagpasa ng budget tapos pinapasa ho sa Senado?
Well, the budget really has to originate in the House, and that is the law. So there's nothing we can do about that. Many things have to originate in the House, like bills of when you're requiring money, that has to originate in the House also. Franchises have to originate in the House. So many things originate in the House first, and that is the law. So there's nothing we can do about that. However, we conduct hearings already in the Senate, but we don't pass it until the House passes it.
Okay.
Serge, how would you we mentioned that a congressman has a little district to think about, and he has to bring resources to that district, which is why more often than not they will join whatever party the president belongs to. How does that differ from the point of view of a senator who's elected by the whole country?
Well, we're more independent there. We're not tied to Malacanang. That's why the senators tend to vote independently, while the House is tied to the apron strings of the president. The I remember I said the there's only one vote for the speakership of the House, and that's the president of the Philippines. That has been true since 1907. You see, the House has always depended on the dole-outs from the President of the Philippines or from the Governor General at that time. So pag walang dole-out, hindi wala kayong boto. So you have to vote in return for the dole-outs. And that is going on up to the present day, which is why I remember this when President Ramos, then President Ramos, approached me in about when was this? 1992, and he said he took me aside, after the elections, but before he took office, and he said, "Can you talk to Tony Cuenco?" And Tony Cuenco then was a member of the other party, the party of Mitra. And I said, "Why will I talk to Tony Cuenco?" He said, "Because we will make him speaker. We don't have the votes in the House." And I told him, "Mr. President, if you want Mudik to be your speaker, he'll become speaker." Mudik was his driver. So his name was Mudik Ilios. I said, "If you want Mudik to be speaker, he'll be speaker." I said, "Why?" "Because the president controls the House. So let Joe de Venecia get it." And Joe was sick in the hospital at the time. Yeah, he had flu or something. So in the hospital, I said, "Let Joe get it, because if he wants it, then let him have it. Whoever wants it, that's nothing compared to what you want." And so he let Joe de Venecia get the speakership. Now, let me fast forward. You remember when Joe de Venecia's son came out with that accusation against the first gentleman? He accused him of being a crook. And so Joe was speaker at the time. And so there was a rumble in the House, and they said Joe will not be able to retain his seat, but he has a fighting chance. And the reporters in the Senate were asking me, "Sir, anong chance ni Joe sa House?" Because he was going to be replaced by Gloria as speaker. And I said, "If Joe gets more votes than the 10 fingers on my hand, I'll eat my hat." And that's what happened.
Wow.
It was Gloria who decided to change Joe, not the other way around.
Okay.
But Serge, more often than not, we've had a Senate and a House instead of just a National Assembly or a batasan. Why do you think that is? Why do we always go back to having a divided, by two houses in Congress?
It's force of habit. We copied the Americans. The Americans had two houses of Congress, and we decided to have two houses of Congress. Now, in the states, the senators are elected by states. So 2 senators per state. Here, we don't have any state, so we elected our senators at large. But still, we still had the 2 houses of Congress. Now, the reason for that in the United States was that, President Jefferson, he was Ambassador Jefferson then. Yeah, he was talking to President Washington. And Washington asked Jefferson, "Why do we need a Senate when we already have a House?" And Jefferson told him, "To cool the anger of the House." In other words, the House is elected for 2 years. They could be very explosive issues, but the Senate is elected every 6 years. So may konting, shall we say, I don't know how to call it, but it had a perspective that was longer than the House, which is only 2 years.
Mm-mm.
So that's why we have the Senate and the House. But here in the Philippines, I think the senators should be elected by regions to make them responsive to their people. Because right now we're not really very responsive because we're responsive to the entire country.
Mm-mm.
So if you're responsive to a smaller region, then you'll be able to develop that region better.
Okay, yeah. And Serge, yung isa pang yung isa pang function ng Senate. And ito madalas makita ng mga tao kasi pag nagkaroon ng investigation, na yan di ba? Televised lahat, lalo na pag importante yung issue, no? Yun naman yung oversight function, di ba, ng Senate. Na isa ring napakahalagang function ng ating buong Kongreso actually, no?
Yes. Well, the oversight function is very important because otherwise you will allow the executive to run away with anything.
Mm-mm.
And so you need the oversight function. Now let me talk about investigations. Everything we do in the Senate is an investigation. Everything. Every hearing is an investigation.
Yes.
When you conduct a hearing, say in aid of the budget of the say Department of Natural Resources, that's an investigation already.
Correct.
So we always are investigating there. Now, when we have special investigations, that's when we think, oh, this is something. No, it's not. It's just a function of the Senate.
Mm-mm.
Now, in the United States, they have what they call the General Accounting Office. This is a very important office which we do not have here. Now, the General Accounting Office is the blue ribbon committee of the Senate, but it's not only the blue ribbon of the Senate, the blue ribbon of the House, and it is both joint in the United States. That when anything comes out of the General Accounting Office, that's already, boy, that's very, very heavy. Now, the General Accounting Office is also an office that is independent of the really independent of the House and the Senate. When you give something to the General Accounting Office to investigate, they investigate it. And the investigating can go on for 2, 3, 5, 6 years, but they will investigate.
Mm-mm.
Now there are about over 1,000 investigations pending in the General Accounting Office. They have about 600 investigations finished every year. Here, when you investigate, pagtapos ng term mo, wala na yung investigation. That's no good.
Mm-mm.
And the House and the Senate don't join together. So in the States, you give it to a body, which is called the General Accounting Office, and they run with the ball. They run with it, and they come out with a proof or non-proof.
Serge, isn't that what COA does?
No, COA is different. COA, may COA rin sa United States, no? But the General Accounting Office is the blue ribbon. The blue ribbon of the United States. You look it up. You Google it. It used to be called something else, but the name is so innocuous. But it is the heaviest. I think it has about over 1,000 people working for it. And
Serge, let me ask you something on your personal opinion. You've worked with both congressmen and senators. What, to your mind, makes for a effective congressman, and what makes for an effective senator? What does it take?
I don't know. You just have to keep on doing what you're doing. You'll have to choose another word. I don't know what you mean by effective.
Well, I mean, because a congressman, from my understanding, really has a district to worry about. A senator, by design, can really just pick anything they want about the whole country. So then a certain difference in point of view is required. I mean, that's why I've noticed many of the tougher laws actually get passed in the Senate and never make it past the House, which has to worry about whether the president likes it or whether even whether groups in their district likes it. So in dealing with both, who do you think what do you think it takes to to make your mark?
Well, let me put that another way. You're saying what does it take to pass something into law? Okay, and you just have to take everything into consideration. And what you're asking me is what is the difference between a congressman and a senator? There's really no difference at all. When you look at the law, you look at the law and you see what. Now, of course, a certain law might not be good for your district, so you'll fight that. But then you've got about what 300 other congressmen to what. So iba naman yun. In the Senate, we tend to look at the national issue rather than a local issue. So we vote according to the national perspective rather than a localized perspective.
Okay, but you're involved in the process, and this is something students ask a lot. If your job is to make laws, how come you're not all required to be lawyers?
You don't have to
How?
be lawyers. As a matter of fact, law is very, very limited. Law is just memorizing what is in the law. Okay, but you don't know medicine, you don't know economics, you don't know teaching. There are many other perspectives to be taken rather than just knowing law in the Senate. Because even if you know the law, but if you don't know economics, what will happen? Nothing will happen.
Under the Constitution now, a congressman has a term of 3 years and can only run 3 times. Then they have to take a vacation. A senator gets elected for 6 years, can only run twice. So by the time you know the job, you have to leave. Has this made for a better Senate, a better House, or what's been its effect?
No, it's not made for a good House or a good Senate because you need, for example, when you're used to a committee, you need seniority in that committee. In the United States Senate and in the United States House, they have seniorities because they don't have any term limits. So a senator might join, say, the Judiciary Committee in the beginning, and he will stick to that Judiciary Committee. And maybe if he gets elected 4 or 5 times, he becomes chairman of that committee already. And he permanently will be chairman of the committee until he retires, or until he's removed, or until the other party wins. But there will always be a primary Republican and a primary Democrat in that committee. So whoever is in the majority, he becomes the chairman. And if the other one party becomes a majority, the other senator becomes the chairman. But it's like that. Over here, we change our chairman every 3 years. So that's not good at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I was chairman of social services 1 year, and then the next year I became chairman of banking, and the next year I became chairman of energy, and it was no good. We should stick to the same committee. And so, well, maybe they should change that, but I don't know how they're going to change that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Senator Serge, sa mga nakakabata ho sa inyo, kagaya kami ni Leloy, mas bata ho sa inyo, we grew up na lagi hong may Senado, may Kongreso, may mga congressman. So that's how we grew up. But it's hard for us to imagine of a time that Congress wasn't there. But you lived at a time when wala hong Kongreso. Actually, nakulong ho kayo nung time ng martial law. Napadlock ho yung Kongreso. Kasi madalas ko hong marinig ngayon sa social media, ano bang utility ng Congress, ng legislative body natin? So sa inyo ho, paano niyo ho sasagutin yung ganyan na ano po yung importansya ng Congress sa ating lipunan?
Ano yung ano?
Ano ho yung importance ng Congress, ng legislative body in our society?
Well, during the time of Marcos, he dominated everything. It was ruled by decree, and that's not good because you always have several points of view in a society where you have to take that into consideration and weigh it. So when you only have one man determining that, That's a recipe for disaster. That's why we need Congress. Congress can be very unwieldy, but you still need Congress because when you try everything else, it's no good. So you still have to go back to Congress.
So it's a necessary evil, which brings us to but this brings us to one aspect that I think people don't understand very well, which is the party list. What's happened to the parties? What, ideally, what is it supposed to do, and what is the reality from what you've observed?
Okay.
What's the difference?
The party list was born out of a true desire of the writers of the Constitution to bring other people with other points of view into the political system. So that was good. But then when you came into implementing it, you can't have 20 or 30 or 50 party lists because that's not going to make anything. In the other countries, like say France or whatnot, they have a minimum. Say like you'll be a party, but you have to have a minimum of 5% of the vote or 10% of the vote to have a representative. Otherwise, you don't have a representative. And that will make it better. I don't know how we're going to change that here. I really don't know. But we have to do that because when you have 50 party lists, that doesn't make any difference. And believe me, those party lists are now elected by the people who have the most money. So, you need only about 300,000 or 400,000 votes to get a party list. So all you have to do is control one section of the country and may party list ka na. So Bicol has a party list. Ako Tacloban has a party list. But those are not parties. They are not really parties. They just call themselves parties and they get elected. So we have to change that.
No.
Well, this brings up an interesting point, Serge, because you can remember when it was different. What is supposed to be the role of parties? The excuse given is the president can pick the speaker of the house because he's the head of the party, and everyone joins that party when the president wins. But ideally, what is supposed to be, you're elected as a senator, but then let's say you'd be a member of a party. How do you reconcile those two identities?
You don't. We've tried to do it, but we can't. I remember when I first joined politics, I was a member of Lakas and UCD. And then after a while, I said I had to join the Liberal Party because Cory Aquino asked me to run with Vice President Fred Lim, and Fred Lim was the Liberal Party. So I joined the Liberal Party. And then after that, we lost, of course. And I just joined the PDP Laban because it was such a small party. It was Nene Pimentel, and I just stayed there all the time. Yeah, up to today, I'm still a member of PDP Laban. But when I run, I just put in independent. But the parties don't mean anything. It hasn't meant anything since 1986. They're just vehicles to help a person get elected. But if he doesn't get elected, there's no more party. So, for example, PRP, the one of Miriam Defensor Santiago, it was only to help her get elected. Or the one of Erap Estrada, it was only to help him get elected. Or the NPC of Dandy Coanco, it was only to help him get elected. And then even the Lakas NUCD now is neither here nor there. So we really don't have parties. And these people, for example, even before martial law, in the House and in the House, for example, you had about, say, 120, 130 congressmen at the time. And they said there were only two parties, Liberal and Nacionalista. That's not true. Because when for example, Quirino lost to Magsaysay, and pretty soon, the Nacionalista Party had 90 members and the Liberal Party had 20 members. And then when Macpagal won in 1961, the Liberal Party had 90 members and the Nationalista Party had 20 members. But what happened? They were the same people. They were the same congressman. Congressman elected all of a sudden. He just switches parties. And then they tell me, Iho, that's just practical because, I have to get my thing from the president. So there's never been any real party in this country. The real parties existed. No, there were parties. They existed prior to the war, which is the Nationalista Party, etc., because they stood for something. But after that, we stood for the same things. So I don't know why we divided ourselves into parties. Now, the real party at that time, after the war, would have been the Democratic Party because it was Senator Recto, and he had a nationalistic bent. And but that was the only party I felt that was really worth looking into because the rest were just, it was our personal interest, the personal interest of the congressman rather than the national interest, and that's no good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is pretty grim so far. I mean, if you're a young voter, why should a young voter, let's say, take their chance on voting for a Serge Osmeña or anyone else? What's at stake for them when they have to pick? I mean, let's divide the ballot. When they do those 12 senators, what do you think should be going through their head? And when they're picking a congressman who's going to have a big effect on their area, what should be going through their head?
First, let's go back to the way the senators were chosen after the war. No, the senators were nominated by the party, and so the party tends to be more orderly in that sense. So they nominate a senator from the Luzon, from Southern Luzon, from Visayas, etc., etc. Then they nominate the really good ones. But after the election of Rogelio de la Rosa in 1959, that threw things out window because they found out that when you have popularity among the masa, ay hindi mo na kailangan ng party. And that's what started things going.
That's interesting because one of the things you often hear, Senator, is taasan naman natin yung qualifications ng pagiging senator or congressman. Sabi nga ni Manolo kanina na napakasimple ho yung requirements. But at the same time, kayo ho ay living example na how do I say this? Hindi kasi ang alam ko ho, hindi ho kayo nakatapos ng college, hindi ko college degree holder.
Yeah,
But at the same time, Senator, nung nasa Senado ho ako, you had the reputation of being one of the most hardest working and most pinapag-aralan niyo ho talaga yung paggawa ng batas eh. So kung go ahead, sir.
There's two things I can answer to that. First, I finished 3 years of college. I didn't take my fourth year because I got kicked out of Georgetown for getting into a car accident, and that was 3 years. And when I came back here, I found out I had to take Tagalog, ROTC, theology, Philippine history, etc. in my fourth year. So I said, forget it. I won't take my fourth year anymore. Secondly, you're always studying every day of your life. The formal studies are just it. It's just the formal. But if you don't keep on studying the rest of your life, you're never going to get anywhere. So it's not that nakatapos o hindi nakatapos. Walang kwenta yan. You study or don't you study? And that is what kept me going. I just kept on studying the rest of my life. And up to now, I'm still studying.
Okay, yeah. Serge, ano yung mabibigay mong tip lalo na sa kabataan Kasi nga pipili sila ng senador, 12, pipili sila ng kongresista ng kanilang distrito. Ano yung masasabi mo na kailangan nilang maging batayan, di ba? What would be their
Well, the first thing you should ask them is, anong magagawa na itong tao na ito para sa akin?
Okay.
And anong magagawa niya para sa bansa? Okay? Now, maybe there's nothing that the guy can do for you, but he can do for the country. And that's the first question you ask yourself. You don't vote for him because he's Mr. Agimat or no, you don't. You have to ask yourself, why will I vote for him? What will he do for me? What will he do for my country? And that's the very first question that every voter should ask himself.
Okay. Serge, maraming salamat. Siguro, Serge, pagkatapos ng eleksyon, iimbitahin ka namin ulit para mapag-usapan natin yung naging complexion ng lower house at ng Senado after the elections, kasi ano yun, mas magandang usapan yon, di ba, Manolo and Carlo? Maraming salamat, Serge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Serge. So ngayon naman, pakikinggan natin syempre ang ating favorite, di ba, Manolo, na ating mga mag-op-ed sa atin ngayon, walang iba kundi si Leloy Claudio. So Leloy, ano ang iyong masasabi dito sa ating talakayan na
Ang dami-dami pong pwedeng sabihin, Father, kasi ang daming napag-usapan. Pero tatlo yung tanong na gusto kong talakayan ngayon. Yung unang tanong, bakit ang gulo ng lehislatura natin? Dalawang body, tapos ang daming tungkulin. Pangalawa, ano ba talaga nangyayari dyan? Kasi napakalinis ng teorya, gumagawa ng batas. Pero sa napag-usapan natin, parang ang dami pang ibang ginagawa. At saka yung House na dapat independent theoretically, sabi nga ni Senator Serge, ay minamandohan ng Presidente. So ano ba talaga yung katotohanan? Ano yung nangyayari? Tapos pangatlo, in conclusion, given all of this, ano ba ang ideal na kongresista? Ito yung tanong na parang hirap sagutin nung talakayan. So yung unang tanong, bakit ang gulo? Ang gulo kasi dalawang bahagi ang Kongreso natin. Merong Senado, tapos merong Kamara de los Representantes. Tapos sabi pa nga ni Manolo, there's a kind of third house kung saan nagmi-meet itong mga groups na to. At hindi lang batas ang pinag-uusapan ng Kongreso. Pwede itong maging impeachment court in the case of the Senate. Yung mga galing sa Kamara, pwede silang maging prosecutor in an impeachment court. So magulo talaga. Pero naisip ko, itong gulo na to, in a way, ito yung gulo ng demokrasya. Kasi ang gulo ng demokrasya ay yung gulo ng iba't ibang perspektibo. Kaya sinasabi nga ni Manolo na itong mga houses ito ay ideally mga deliberative bodies, mga body kung saan nag-uusap at nagdedebate ang mga tao. So pag naghahanap tayo ng kongresista, naghahanap din tayo in effect ng magaling magdebate. At pag sinabi natin magaling magdebate, hindi ibig sabihin nito magaling lang mambara ng ibang tao. Hindi yun ang esensya ng pagdedebate. Ang pagdedebate ay yung proseso ng pagbabahagi ng sarili mong opinyon at pakikinig at pagbago rin ng sarili mong opinyon. So, importante yan. Pag pinapanood natin yung Kamara, pag pinapanood natin yung Senado, magaling ba sila magdebate? Yung ikalawang tanong na napag-isipan ko is yung ano ba talaga yung realidad dyan? Kasi so far dito sa Proyekto Pilipino na pag-usapan natin yung teorya. Pero sa Civica, importante rin pag-usapan yung ano ba talaga yung nangyayari. Kasi ang nangyayari dito is theoretically, hiwalay ang lehislatura sa ehekutibo, pero ang katotohanan, ang daling hawakan ng Presidente ang House of Representatives. Sabi nga ni Senator Serge, effectively, the Speaker of the House is an appointed position. Ina-appoint ng Presidente. Hindi yun ang teorya, pero according kay Senator Serge, yun ang katotohanan. At dahil yun ang katotohanan, I think, importante na talakay ng mga panauhin natin at ng ating mga host, yung oversight capacity ng Senate. Sabi nga ni Senator Serge, hindi masama na nag-iimbestiga lagi ang Senado dahil sila yung isa sa mga pinaka-independent at makapangyarihan na katawan ng ating gobyerno na talagang pwedeng ipakita sa sambayanan kung ano yung mga mali na ginagawa ng mga ibang branches ng government, mga ibang bahagi ng gobyerno. Yung ikatlong tanong na gusto kong napag-isipan ko is, given na ang gulo-gulo, given that the reality does not match the theory, anong ideal natin na kongresista? Well, napakahirap niyan. Siguro, unang-una, ang ideal ng kongresista is someone who can navigate this mess, itong gulo na ito, this gulo between theory and reality. Pero yung isa ko rin napagtanto, yung sinabi ni Senator Serge, sabi niya, there's a reason bakit hindi dapat abogado lang lagi ang ating mga kongresista. Dahil ang abogasya, pwede ito maging makitid. Pero ang mga kongresista, they should be informed about everything that affects society dahil merong batas tungkol sa bawat aspeto ng lipunan. May mga batas tungkol sa kalusugan, may mga batas tungkol sa ekonomiya, may mga batas tungkol sa edukasyon. So, napagtanto ko na ang dapat hinahanap natin when we look for senators and representatives ay yung mga malawak at malalim at interes. Malawak at malalim ang interes at ang kaalaman. Pag bumoto tayo, therefore, ngayong May, hindi lang dapat natin hinahanap yung magaling, hindi lang dapat natin hinahanap yung kaaya-aya, hinahanap dapat natin yung magaling magdebate, malalim ang interes, at pinag-iisipan ang bawat aspeto ng lipunan. Napakahirap po na trabaho niyan. Maraming salamat.
Okay, salamat Leloy. Siguro nga napakagandang paglagom ng ating usapan, ano? Kaya maraming salamat, kagaya nga ng ating sinabi, ay sana maimbitahan natin ulit si Serge, ano, pagkatapos ng eleksyon, kasi napakagandang talakayan din yan, di ba? Matapos ng eleksyon, kung anong ating parang assessment ng ating Kongreso at ng ating Senado, no? So Serge, again, maraming salamat at sana nga makabalik ka, and Leloy, thank you rin do sa mga na binigay mo sa amin ng mga insights na magandang pag-isipan, ano? At sa talakayan na dinaanan natin, siguro maganda hong pag-isipan natin lahat ng napag-usapan dito, kasi ito nga yung yung karanasan na binabangga natin dun sa teorya, no? At siguro nga ang mahalaga dito lahat, anong klaseng kongreso ba at senado ang gusto natin, ang magdidesisyon niyan kasi kayo, mga botante, no? Kaya sana ay maging magandang punto ng pagninilay itong mga napag-usapan, itong mga natalakay dito sa ating episode na ito. At sa susunod na episode, palalalimin pa natin ang ating usapan tungkol sa party list, ano? At siguro nga napakaganda ng input ni Serge sa atin ngayon, yung party list na dapat may limitasyon. So, sa susunod na episode natin, sa pagbabalik natin, pag-uusapan natin ng party list, sana ay marami kayong napulot, maraming mapag-iisipan, lalong-lalo na habang lumalapit ang ating eleksyon. So, Senator Serge, marami pong salamat. Leloy, Carlo, and Manolo, maraming salamat. Ito po ay isang episode na naman ng Proyekto Pilipino. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat.
Salamat, Father.